Good afternoon, Metropolitan A.M.E. It's indeed an honor and pleasure to be here today with you for HBCU Sunday. It's indeed a great day to celebrate all of our institutions. And of course, we have some very special institutions among them. And I bring to you greetings from the land of Sparta, Norfolk State University. Behold. I also bring you greetings from that first Mecca that's in the West End. In 1897, we began building that Mecca. That Mecca was none other than Virginia Union University. And I had the wonderful, wonderful pleasure of serving my family. And I served as Dean of the College at Winston-Salem State University. So I know we have our Winston-Salem State alums. So it's indeed an honor and pleasure, and of course to all of the distinguished men of that first fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated. And we didn't mention one other group. It's the group where we started it all. And that is, of course, Prince Hall Freemasons. Prince Hall Freemasons. But I'm indeed honored to be here today. And I was sitting back in Reverend Lamar's office, and I remembered just a few weeks ago I was in Atlanta with a dear friend. And that dear friend, we were talking, and we were at Friendship Baptist Church talking about the gift of black theological education. And that dear friend said, are you going to be in D.C. soon? And I said, I think I'm supposed to be in D.C. later in February. She said, okay, let me know the date, and I'll come there with you. And of course, this morning, she showed up. None other than the Dean, Yolanda Pierce. When you not only have theological leaders and innovators, but you have dear friends like Dean Pierce, you know you're truly blessed. So thank you, Dean Pierce. And of course, my dear colleagues from Howard. I drove up from Richmond this morning, and I got on Mass Ave, and I was driving down, and there was a little traffic jam, but stopped right in front of the church, and a friend greeted me. None other than the dean of the graduate school at Howard, Dana Williams. Thank you, Dana. And my dear friend, Josh Myers, Professor Josh Myers, we just finished a radio program talking about the future of HBCUs and looking at these institutions as maroon spaces. Spaces for decolonial thinking, spaces for really liberatory thinking and liberatory being. And two of my seminarians and colleagues that I've learned a lot from, my dear friends Peter and Brian. It's always great to learn from your colleagues who are also your students, because folks always begin to think that, oh, once you're the professor, you have nothing else to learn. No, you learn from your students. And it's the critical dialogue between students and faculty where some of the greatest ideas are born. But I want to say a special word for a dear friend and a dear brother. You know, there are special people in the world. When you meet, you already know that you've met them before. When you meet, there's a kinship spirit, and there's a way in which you engage one another where you said, we've already met. Brother Bill Lamar is one of those spirits, one of those brothers. He's a true freedom fighter for our people. He stands for justice. He's a man of integrity. And when you look at the ministry, and when you think of those prophetic individuals in the pulpit, you're reminded that they are born within those communities that foster them, and they hold a deep fidelity to the values that have built our institutions. So, Brother Bill, thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for allowing me to join the community here at Metropolitan A.M.E. Today, I want to speak with you briefly about a theme that's dear to my heart and a theme that is resonant on this HBCU Sunday. I want to speak on the theme, the gift of blackness. The gift of blackness. This theme is animated by the scripture from 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 4. There are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit distributes them. There are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit distributes them. Let us pray. Eternal God, we thank you for this moment. We thank you for allowing the ecclesia to gather once again. It is in and through the gathering of the community of the faithful that you allow us to be renewed, you allow us to be refreshed, and you allow us to be reinvigorated with your Spirit, so that we may continue to bear witness to the truth of the divine, the truth you have shared with us, the liberatory and life-affirming witness of none other than your Son, Jesus. We ask now that you continue to be with us in this moment of worship, so that the words of this particular message may resonate with us, may abide within us, and allow us to embody your truth, so that we may be witnesses to a liberating, life-affirming, and loving God that you are. In the name of the one you have given to us, we pray. Amen. She came home running back to the mothering blackness, deep in the smothering blackness. White tears, icicle gold plains of her face. She came home running. She came down creeping, here to the black arms waiting, now to the warm heart waiting. Rime of alien dreams befrost her rich brown face. She came home creeping. She came home blameless, black yet as Hagar's daughter, tall as was Sheba's daughter. Threats of northern winds die on the desert's face. She came home blameless. Maya Angelou's The Mothering Blackness, from her 1971 collection, Just Give Me a Cool, captures the elegance and the essence of blackness. You see, blackness is not a threat. Blackness is not a problem. Blackness is not a pathology. It is not deviant, nor is blackness deficient. Here, blackness operates as a safe space of authenticity and of affirmation. A blackness that welcomes one home. A blackness that heals. A blackness that does not seek to accuse, nor does it seek to use. A blackness that welcomes one home, blameless. In a moment when the community of the faithful reflects on the historic and continuing significance of our nation's historically black colleges and universities, we may also use this moment as an opportunity to engage in a considered moment of deep reflection about the meaning and substance of the gift of these institutions, a gift and the substance of which animates their lives and animates their institutional existence. It is in this context where we are granted a communal moment to reflect on the gift of Blackness. For you see, all too often we may think of our institutions as institutions mired in difficulty, institutions mired in deficiencies, institutions mired in a death drive. But I'm here to say that these institutions give life to a gift that animated them at their beginning, and a gift that continues to animate them in 2019 and into the long future. It is that gift of Blackness, the gift that continues to keep on giving. A gift in its truest sense is unexpected. A gift is unaccounted for. A gift is unwarranted and unreasoned. A gift punctuates the texture of the given, and it ruptures the cognitive registers with a new opportunity for existence. You see, a gift evades all of the logical and categorical taxonomies of the dominant ways of knowing. You see, a gift, truly a gift, cannot be returned. A gift cannot be exchanged. A gift is something that you cannot say thank you for, because a gift is something wholly unexpected, wholly given to nothing existed before. It is the gift of these institutions, not just in their institutional form, but the gift of Blackness. Something that we cannot expect, something that we cannot actually give a critical rendering of, but it is this gift that animates these institutions. You see, the reason we turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 4 is because we are reminded that there are many gifts. There are many gifts, but they all come from the same Spirit. We know that the church at Corinth was involved in deep conflict. You see, in this chapter, we find Paul's intervention on the question of gifts. In this discourse, we learn that the church wanted to create a hierarchy of gifts. The church wanted to create a rigid sequence about what gifts are valued and what gifts are less valued. The church wanted to create a rigid sequence of the values and norms around gifts, kind of like our society. You see, we may value a certain performative blackness. A certain performative blackness that we can put on, maybe on the weekend, maybe at a football game or a basketball game or alumni weekend or homecoming. But then we put on those other gifts that are more valued, because in order to be professional, you have to put on the gifts of a professional society. In order to be respected, you have to put on the gifts of a respectable society. In order to be valued, you have to put on those gifts of the valued class. You see, much like the church at Corinth, we understand that there's a conflict in those gifts even to this day. Even as we value the gift of blackness, it is not valued by its own scale. It is valued by those other gifts. We're just as good as. HBCUs do just as good a job. We offer you just as good an education as. We don't even assign the value of the gifts according to its own categorical logic. So we are witnessing Paul reminding us that there's something about the diversity of gifts that we all must value because they all come from the same Spirit. Imagine a world, imagine a true world where blackness is not denied, blackness is not devalued, blackness is not denigrated. Imagine a world where blackness is not a problem, it is not a pathology. Instead, blackness is the very condition of possibility of life itself. Imagine such a world. Imagine such a world where blackness, in all of its depth, in all of its diversity, and in all of its dignity, affirms the very worth, value, and dignity of life itself. In his 1920 classic Dark Water, Voices from Within the Veil, W.E.B. Du Bois analyzes the souls of white folk. In The Souls of White Folk, Du Bois writes, unfortunate, but where is the misfortune? Mine? Am I, in my blackness, the sole sufferer? I suffer? And yet somehow above the suffering, above the shackled anger that beats the bars, above the hurt that crazes, there surges in me a vast pity. Pity for people imprisoned and enthralled, hampered and made miserable for such a cause, for such a fantasy as whiteness. You see, whiteness has to construct a pathological blackness in order to stand up and solidify its singularity as the top gift of all. Whiteness in its singularity goes unstated. That singularity may remind us that this is how you should believe. This is what Christianity is. This is what civilization is. This is what it means to be modern, to be respectable, to be Norman. This is what it means to be human. In a moment, we may desire sameness. We may affirm a singular yet flawed universal. We may affirm a singular and flawed standard. We may mistake one gift as the gift. It is in this moment where Paul intervenes. Paul instructs in order to clarify the situation. Paul teaches in order to explain and instruct the community at Corinth how to go about liberation. There are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit distributes them. In a way, Paul offers us an ABC of blackness. An ABC of blackness. First, blackness is authentic. Blackness is authentic. The gift of blackness unfolds a new idea and a new landscape of possibility. The gift of blackness is not a mere rehearsal. It is not repetition. Blackness is not just a repeat of the same. Instead, it gives something new into the world. Blackness doesn't just want mere rehearsal of an old world. Blackness desires a new world and a new humanity. It does not want a rehearsal of life within the dominant moral and religious languages inherited from modernity. Instead, blackness wants to create something new. When our ancestors spoke of freedom, It was a freedom that was not defined and enshrined in the documents of this nation state, but it was a freedom that authorized a new way of being in the world that affirmed blackness in its original condition. Once again, Du Bois is instructive here. At the 75th anniversary of Lincoln University in Missouri, Du Bois stated, "You have an extraordinary opportunity for social invention, for planning and carrying through the methods by which you can show you can show how a minority cannot simply repeat the accomplishments of the majority, but can show the majority a new way of life." Creating this new way of life is at the very foundation of the freedom of our historically black colleges and universities. These unique intellectual communities take up the challenge to tell our story of freedom and to create anew the conditions of possibility for new generations to establish new regimes of freedom for future generations. You see, if we just want to be a repeat of dominant institutions, we can just dissolve these black colleges and go to majority institutions. If we just wanted to model and mimic the dominant way of life, there would be no need for HBCU Sunday. There would be no need for not even the AME Church or the Black Baptist Church. We should just meld into a sea of whiteness, a sea of the same. But God has given many gifts, and the gift of blackness is the gift that we have, and it is that gift that we give freely to the world. It is that gift that grounds and understates an idea that there's an infinite density to blackness. There is no one way to be black. So when folks always want to say, I found that we find this first Negro doing this, or I didn't know black people did this, my response is always, well, of course. We've created worlds. We've created nations. We've created civilizations. We've created ways of life. So there's nothing that amazes me about what black people do. I affirm all that we do. You see, blackness is excessive. It is overflowing. It is what the great Charles Long called a saturated phenomenon. Meaning, when you think of blackness, when you think all that goes into it, when you think of our culture, our history, our heritage, not only on the continent, but also in the diaspora, when you think about blackness across space and time, then you're just overwhelmed. You're just reminded that out of all of this richness, out of all of this wonder, out of all of this splendor, God has gifted us a gift that keeps on giving. Blackness is authentic. It keeps on keeping on. And I'm reminded that sometimes when we watch popular movies, I like Black Panther. I don't have to dream of Wakanda. I don't have to go to a movie theater to then affirm blackness. That's all I have to do is walk on the campus of Howard University. I don't have to wait. I don't have to pay money I can walk on the campus of Virginia Union and I can see all of this beautiful blackness each and every day, and I can come to Metropolitan A.M.E. and I see this blackness, and I don't have to be in awe because we need to have this on a movie screen. Fiction cannot deal with the depth of reality. And I'm even reminded that in that movie, there was something about Wakanda, right? But it wasn't about Wakanda, it was about a material. Wasn't about that vibranium. And vibranium came from the beginning. And it was not not Wakanda, but it was that vibranium. That vibranium that came from the beginning, like in the beginning. But it was what the people did with the vibranium. It wasn't the vibranium itself, it was the gift of the people and what they did with the vibranium. In other words, it was the gift of blackness. That gift of blackness that was given in the beginning. An authentic blackness. Blackness is also beautiful. Blackness is beautiful. The gift of blackness it enables us to understand that in a panoply of different registers, blackness gives us a possibility of understanding beauty and all of its depth and all of its complexity. Beauty is creative, beauty is collaborative, beauty is inexhaustible. When we think of such a beauty, how else do we understand the survival and thriving of a people in the nightmare we call America? You see, out of this, we create, we cure, we think, we treasure. We do this because it is who we are, regardless of condition, regardless of circumstance. Why? Because God has gifted us with a gift that is different. It is unique. It is ours, and it is our blackness. Howard Thurman has written, "We've made an idol of togetherness, which takes the form of a muted mass hysteria. Togetherness in this sense is the watchword of our times. It seems that togetherness is more and more a substitute for God." My brothers and sisters, blackness reminds us that it does not operate along the analogs of the dominant. It eschews the taxonomies of the ways of the oppressor, and it seeks to inaugurate a new being in the world. It does not attempt to affirm itself by the categorical dictates of a humanity that is fundamentally inhumane. In other words, if the logics and technologies of a capitalist civilization defined us as a people and enslaved us as a people, then we can be well sure that the dominant logics and technologies of that same civilization will not free us as a people. We have to be very careful in our moment, because in a moment where we think the beauty is only one thing, and we are willing to give up our innate beauty to think that blackness should be along the lines of the dominant, or something merely performative, or something that we could just put on and take off at whim and at wit, and not something that is about the very essence and being of who we are and whose we are, then we give up the very beauty of the divine within us. You see, blackness is a chaos that is a new cosmos. It is a genesis of a new beginning, for it is out of this blackness that we are offering new light to the world. new opportunities for creating new knowledges, new opportunities for forging new ways of collective life, new opportunities for new forms of solidarity. It is in this context where I'm reminded of the words of Nina Simone, in that we can all sing along. To be young, gifted, and black. Oh, what a precious dream. To be young, gifted, and open your heart to what I mean. In the whole world, you know there are billions of boys and girls who are young, gifted, and that's a fact. Blackness is authentic. Blackness is beautiful. Blackness is also committed. Blackness is authentic. Blackness is beautiful. But blackness is committed. Blackness is committed to justice. Blackness is committed to love. Blackness is committed to peace. Blackness is committed to charity. And this blackness is not a blackness in a superficial sense, but in a deep, structural, systemic sense. You see, blackness is about being committed to building and being the beloved community. In many ways, blackness is about recognizing that whenever there's a foundation in this world that does not affirm the dignity, worth, and value of all of the diversity of humanity in whatever form, blackness is committed to deep structural transformation. In a moment of disruption and discord, to say it lightly, in our social, cultural, and economic and political worlds, we must remember that blackness is not something blackness as commitment is not something superficial. It is not being committed at the point of a particular protest. It is not a commitment at a point of a particular rally. It is not a point of commitment on a particular day. Blackness is about being committed to the unfolding of freedom in the very existence in our everyday lives, where we live, where we breathe, and where we work. And yes, blackness operates not only in the church, not only in the home, but when we walk on the street, when we protest in our jobs, and when we gather on Sundays to ensure that we protest each and every day, such that this world may be truly transformed. Blackness reminds us that our historically black colleges and institutions must be institutions whereby blackness is not mere performance, whereby our curriculums must reflect the deep depth and variety and density of blackness, but where our institutions must be committed to ensuring that there are new generations of justice fighters and freedom warriors that are coming out. We just don't want to graduate individuals with degrees. A degree is simple. It's 120 credit hours over 4 years. It's 15 credit hours per semester over 8 semesters. You can finish that in 4 years. If you do it and you want to do summer school, go to summer school. But we have to be reminded, and we have to remind ourselves, that our HBCUs are not simply about individuals graduating for jobs or accolades from the dominant culture. But our graduates and our institutions must be measured by the quality of intellect, the strength of character, and the measure of dedication to which our graduates, our faculty, our staff, our administrators, our friends, our communities pursue justice, ensure charity, and ensure that our world is saturated by a love of humanity for one another. The promise of the prophet stands at the center of our institutions and our commitment. Blackness is a sign that we belong to a loving, liberating, and life-affirming God. Blackness is a sign of the promise that God is not God of an empire, but God is on the side of those who continue to fight for justice. God is a God of those who stand not on the side of the rich against the poor, but God supports those who continue to fight for justice and continue to ensure that those who are powerless will overcome. God is not a God of the mighty against the marginalized. God is a God of the oppressed. It is the sign of this promise. It is the sign of this commitment that we understand that our task is to ensure that justice must flow like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. It is a sign of a woke people. A woke people who know that blackness is not a burden. Blackness is not a problem. Blackness is not a pathology, but blackness is a gift of God. It is a sign that affirms the worth, value, and dignity of black people and of all humanity. It is a sign that our history is not a history that began with slavery, because as those ancestors remind us, if you begin with slavery, then your entire history is one of progress. If you begin with slavery, everything looks like progress. I'm reminded that we were enslaved and we were never slaves. Blackness is a history that begins in the beginning. It is part of the eschatological promise that reminds us, behold, I am always with you, even to the end of the age. Blackness is authentic. Blackness is beautiful. And blackness is committed. There are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit distributes them. Ours is the gift of blackness. It is affirming, it is authentic, it is beautiful, and it is committed. And it is through such a gift of blackness that we will continue to offer to the world a new possibility of existence and a new humanity. She came home blameless, black yet as Hagar's daughter, tall as was Sheba's daughter. Threats of northern winds die on the desert's face. She came home blameless. Metropolitan A.M.E., let's come home to blackness. It is our gift to the world. It is a gift that continues to give. And it is the gift of life itself. God bless you, and amen.